this one just kept going, and it got kind of worse as it went on overnight. So it kept my team very busy.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this Tuesday, right after a very, very busy weekend. We had one of the biggest storm weekends that we've seen all year, or definitely the biggest storm weekend that we've seen all year so far. So we're going to do a little recap. I'm joined with our CEO of HailTrace, Derik Kline, and our lead mapping meteorologist, Stephen. And I appreciate you guys joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and pull up some radars, and we can just talk about what we saw this past weekend. So before we get into the nitty-gritty here, I've got some stats for us because I think this is really interesting. We saw over 300 tornado warnings this past weekend, over 650 thunderstorm warnings. It was like this first event was like go big or go home. We had a moderate risk. It's been 76 days since the last time a moderate risk was issued. That was back in December, and that was rare either way to see a December moderate risk. And the last time we saw a high risk was actually last May, over 300 days ago. So just some stats to throw out there to show you how big this storm system was. Derik, Steve, what did you guys think about this storm system as it was happening, looking back after the fact? What were your thoughts?
It was something that we were watching this coming out. So we knew 7, 8, 9 days ago that this system was going to come out. And even historically, mid-March is about the time that the first big trough comes out. And even last year, right? March 13th and 14th is when it came out. This year was March 14th and 15th, delayed by a day. We joked that it was because of leap year last year is what pushed it back a day this year. But it was something we saw coming. It was a huge negative tilt trough, which is basically in layman's terms, what that means is it's the axis of the trough. But more importantly, the storms stay isolated when we have a negative tilt trough. So when we have a positive tilt trough, we get squall lines. So wind and isolated hail and isolated tornadoes. But when we have a negative tilt trough, the shear vectors are lined up properly. And so the storms become more isolated, which allow them to rotate, which allow them to make bigger hail, to make bigger tornadoes. And this trough came out like that. And it did everything it was advertised to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really was just like warning after warning after warning. It was storm after storm. Once that first storm got going on Friday afternoon, we had one pop-up storm over Kansas City. And I thought, is this going to ruin Kansas City's chances a little bit later on in the day? And no, we had more storms form later on in the afternoon on Friday. And it was like the second those storms formed, it was just go time until Steve, what time did you finally feel like you could breathe? Sunday afternoon?
Oh, yeah. Sunday afternoon. I mean, the system started midday Friday, and it was nonstop until, overnight Sunday. Mostly a wind event for the Northeast. On Sunday, we did have several large hail reports, though. Especially in Greensboro, where we ended up getting up to tennis balls for them on Sunday. That was another 4-star map. But yeah, I mean, in terms, it was pretty much go from midday Friday until Sunday night. So, I mean, with what we do, we're monitoring, severe activity 24/7, right? So there's a lot of work that goes into it beyond the mapping. We do quality control as well. So, just because the weather stops, we're still doing things after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you guys are doing now before the next system comes in. We've got some storms tonight into tomorrow morning, and then we've got more storms starting on Sunday. Once again, a late weekend event. So we can actually get in some of those. What I have pulled up here is the St. Louis 4-star event. We can go back and look at Springfield. We can look at the Ozarks. Where do you guys want to start with this?
I thought the Ozarks was an interesting place where the storms, so the moisture content in the Ozarks was a little bit low. And that's very typical on a March storm system. It takes a little bit longer to get that Gulf moisture up, especially as far north as Missouri. Um, just because we've had big cold fronts and it's just not setting in Oklahoma, waiting to be pulled north. But the storms trained over themselves in the Ozarks, and so what ended up happening is we had these hell paths that just so the instability was enough with the cold air aloft to really produce some large hail and high volumes of large hail. It wasn't just like one or two big hailstones. It was a lot of big hailstones. And then they just trained over the same area near Ozark over and over and over. There were, 4 or 5 storms that they were isolated. They had lift, they had rotation, but just with the moisture content the way it was, they were somewhat elevated, which kept the tornadoes down early on I guess it was the evening time. But the hail size, and Stephen, you can probably talk a little bit more about the hail size. It was probably some of the largest hail of the day happened back by the Ozark, just south of Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Ozarks definitely had the largest hail of the day on Friday, up to baseball, and multiple rounds of up to baseball sized hail, with those training storms. Um, but yeah, I mean, the training factor was incredible. And that, for us is kind of like a fun challenge, especially when you've got multiple storms, just one after another, producing nearly almost the same size hail. Things get a little muddled. So it's an interesting combination when you're trying to make these swaths and they're all kind of overrunning each other. But yeah, no, the Ozarks, then that area definitely got the most concentrated area of significant hail for the day. So it was a pretty interesting case for sure.
Yeah, and those storms, I mean, the Ozarks is an area that there's a lot of people that live there, but there's also a lot of vacation houses there. So I'm sure a lot of people were getting into that season where they're getting back to those houses. They're getting up there and they're saying, oh, now what do I do? We saw those storms continue to track up the highway, just kind of paralleling the highway. And I have that pulled up here into St. Louis. And we saw a pretty decent tornado in Rolla right over the highway. And then we saw that actually on traffic cameras and just people flashing their lights and having issues on the roadways. Obviously, you never want to be in a tornado on the roads. And then the storms tracked into St. Louis, not only hail, but also tornadoes into St. Louis.
That's where they tapped into that moisture that was lacking back by Ozark and Springfield. Those storms tapped into the higher moisture content, and then all of a sudden they turned into tornado machines, and that essentially went all night long. That was the start of the tornado outbreak. Was near Rolla, Missouri, and then St. Louis had multiple tornadic supercells roll through, and then the supercell started firing back down to the southeast from there. But it wasn't just tornadoes. We obviously had large hail, lots of golf ball size hail. 2 inch, I think, was the largest in St. Louis,
Yes.
and high volumes of that as well. These storms made a lot of hail when they made it.
Right. Yeah.
Derik, you talk about this a lot. What's more important, hail size or hail volume?
Well, you obviously you have to have the hail size has to be there, but typically a big indicator is how much hail is going to tell you um, how much damage you might actually receive. And the St. Louis storm, the Ozark storms had high volumes of hail, and we if we continue to bounce around the country, that it was a trend with this storm system is that when the storms became hailers, they made lots of hail. So College Station, a lot of hail.
Mhm.
Owensboro, Louisville, lots of hail in that storm. Greensboro, lots of hail in that storm. So, it, and that those are all happening on different days, right? But Taylor, I think something that you've always said, we've heard a lot for those that change our health forecast is, monitor the trend, right? If the storm system is doing something, it's you're you know unless something changes, it's going to continue to do the same thing. And
Mhm.
that's kind of what this one did, which is a little more rare when you get to the southeast parts of the country where the lapse rates or the cold air aloft, right? That mixing layer doesn't carry across from the Rockies like it does. But this one, was so strong it was able to pull that cold air all the way across the southeast part of the country and allowed these storms just to continue to produce large damaging hail.
Mhm.
And they did. So Springfield was the very beginning of all of this. And then I don't know if we went to Kentucky or College Station next, but I do have College Station pulled up, so we'll go there next. Here we go for College Station. There we go. This one, and you were mentioning earlier, Derik, we say the trend is your friend. And something that we have seen just over and over and over is that sometimes storms can go rogue and they have a mind of their own. And it seems like they do even things that we cannot forecast them to do. So this storm actually started outside of the risk that we initially gave for the day. It was a little to the west, just barely, and then it went into that risk where we expected to see at least ping pong to golf ball size hail, and that's exactly what we saw. This was an overnight storm that tracked from College Station up almost to Shreveport. As we get closer to Shreveport, you'll see this weakening a little bit, but I do have the Shreveport radar if we want to pull that up. And Steve, your team was watching this.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it was certainly something. Yeah, early morning. Those are always the best time to have these these
Mhm.
big hail events. But yeah, no, this storm came in pretty quick from the southwest and just rolled right up through College Station. I mean, storms that are just outside of a risk area do happen. I mean, it's very, very hard to get, a spot on, prediction. The SPC knows that. But College Station, yeah, I mean, there's 2-inch plus hail. I think there was some wind associated with the storm too, but high volumes of very, very large hail. Um, and it just, it really took off right through College Station. As soon as it got out of College Station, it just kind of dissipated. So yeah, this event was something else.
It's always interesting, because
Yeah.
these storms popped up all the way back by Austin,
Oh
Texas. So I
yeah.
mean, they were really far west,
Yep.
considering that the risk area really started at the Louisiana border. I mean, you're talking
Hmm.
a difference of several hundred miles
Yeah.
outside of the risk area. Um,
Mhm.
which again we've seen it, you know, Taylor, we talked about it in Denver, right? Denver, Colorado, the costliest hailstorm in the US last year, $3 billion in damage,
Oh
was not
yeah.
in a risk area. It
Right.
was zero risk area that day.
Hmm.
So it does happen. And it's actually, just little humble brag on our team, right? But the fact that we catch this stuff, these storms
Hmm.
pop up in the middle of nowhere. The National Weather Service has people in each of these cities to track these storms. So there's a team of 7 or 8 people in every National Weather Service office. So these outbreaks, impacted tons and tons of people. Were working this, and we did it all with a team of 8.
Right.
Um, you know,
Nationwide.
and and
Yeah.
and we didn't miss a single thing.
Right.
Um, and so I think that's, it's an impressive thing. And again, I say constantly that we have the best hail tracking meteorologists in the world at HailTrace. Like there's not a single person better that could do this. But this, picking this up again is a huge testament to that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. In the middle of the night, whenever everyone's sleeping, but our Mets were on it. One thing that we talked about yesterday was, did the models pick up on this? So did our
Mhm.
short-term
Yeah.
models pick up on this? So I reached out to John. He helped me find some of the models from, this is right before the storm happened, so they were already formed down in Austin. But I mean, yes, these models did pick up on this. So this is the which model? This is the NAM. This is the NAM 3K. And these storms they picked up on it eventually, but it took until, I mean, just before the event happened. So how much credit can we give them? But they did pick up on it. If you were looking at short-term models throughout the overnight hours, this is the NAM, and then I can pull up the WRF also. There we go. Picked up on this. And we couldn't get the HER. We couldn't find data going back that far. But I think the NAM did the best on this.
It looks like you had the storm just north of College Station, which anytime you have a storm and it's within 50 miles of what the model says, that's pretty good forecast.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, there it is.
So yeah, nice. Big day. So then did Indiana happen right after this, Steve? Or was it before?
Indiana was a couple hours after that.
Okay.
Like maybe 1 or 2 hours, so not far behind at all. Yeah, the whole.
Yeah. So your team's about 12, 16 hours into this outbreak now.
Right.
And we've already produced a 4-star. We just produced our second 4-star, and now all of a sudden the 5-star storm starts to happen at, just before sunrise. So you've been going all night long, and now the biggest storm of the weekend starts to happen.
Yeah.
For hail, and we had, by the way, potentially an EF5 tornado in Arkansas all at the same time.
Diaz, Arkansas.
Was in the middle of the night as well. So currently at an EF4, but we'll see where it ends up at when things settle down. But then we go to Owensboro, which middle of the night storm, a little tougher. The reports don't come in, so you don't see as much stuff coming off of these storms, but a windy baseball-sized hailstorm.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting too, because I can't really remember much of the last time where we had a solid overnight scenario where you're getting multiple locations hit with large hail, violent tornadoes, significant winds. Last year felt like it was more evening, nighttime. The storms were pretty much done by before midnight. But this first major system of the year, I mean, even March 14th of last year, that storm system was chilling out, maybe around 1 a.m. This one just kept going, and it got kind of worse as it went on overnight. So it kept my team very busy, right through the next morning. I got up at 6 a.m., helped out. We had myself, 2 others working mapping quality control at 6 a.m. So that's something about this.
And that's a testament to, because whenever I left the office, it was 11 o'clock on Friday night. So you were at the office very late, back up, mapping these storms very early. This, kept you guys on your toes the entire weekend. And I did want to ask you, compared to, and we can talk about this later, we can go ahead and talk about this now, compared to what we saw last year, because you have many, many years of storm mapping and storm chasing experience, compared to your experience in weather, what did this event look like to you?
You want to go
first?
Speechless.
You're shocked, stunned.
It was it's a big event. I think the thing that stood out was the hail all night long, especially for a March storm system. I'd have to do some research to see how common that actually is, but in March, instability tends to drop off in the middle of the night, and it gets colder. It's in June, May and June, it's not uncommon to have hail all night long.
Right.
That's in fact some of the biggest hailstorms happen at sunrise with the lower level jet kicking in the morning. But in March, that's a little more rare.
Mhm.
So that was an interesting thing to have. The big hail really start at what was it, 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon
Mhm.
in Ozark, and ultimately we had big hail going on until really around 7 a.m. and then kind of calmed down a little bit after that storm moved through just north of Louisville, and then we kind of went into afternoon tornado outbreak with a little bit of big hail, but not as much on
Right.
Saturday.
Right.
And same with Sunday. Not as much, more wind and tornadoes, but still produce another and couple big time hailstorms.
Yeah. I'll mention this too. I mean, even before this system really got going, I mean, us out here, I mean, the wind we had,
Hmm.
Texas Panhandle, New Mexico, Oklahoma, the wind that we had with this system right before the severe weather kicked off to the east of us was insane. I mean, what were they saying? They haven't had anything major like the winds like this with the storm system, non-severe like storm-related winds since 2011 or something like that. I forget the actual year, but the gusts and the wind gusts that we had out here were no joke. I forget what the actual highest measurement in Oklahoma City was, 70 something, I think,
Hmm.
for clear air wind
Yeah,
event. It was pretty nuts
it was.
Clear,
and
dusty
dusty.
air.
Yeah, some of the traffic wrecks that you saw like in Kansas and Texas from the dust.
Mm.
I mean, huge pileups. So.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was shocked. The local officials were saying just try to stay off the roads as much as you can. We
Hmm.
see that type of messaging in snowstorms, in ice
Hmm.
storms, but we don't see that in, as Steve mentioned, a clear air, just windy day.
Right.
But it wasn't just windy, it was extreme wind gusts that
Oh
were
yeah, and very
causing
dusty.
power outages and,
Yeah,
yeah, issues across multiple states.
yeah,
So
dusty
what type,
wildfires, man. The
yeah,
storm had
everything
it
smelled like
all.
a
So
campfire.
yeah.
Yeah. So, what does that high wind behind this low pressure system or coming in behind, what does that do for our storms? Does it impact it at all for what we saw in St. Louis, in Louisville, and Greensboro? Does that
Well,
impact what we see there?
the wind that so the strong winds themselves don't necessarily impact with that. It's a testament to how low the pressure got in the storm system. Now,
Mhm.
what that does is it creates really, really good forcing and lift. So like the dry air wind that we had was behind the dry line. So that was sinking air. So it's a warming air and it's also a drying air, which is butting into the southeast wind that was out ahead of it. That was also fairly strong, not as strong, but still 40 to 50 mile per hour winds out ahead of the storm system, which gives you your lift and gives you your shear too as you go up in the atmosphere. So and that wind gets mixed down to the surface, right, from aloft, and so that's the type of wind shear that these storms were working with, which is
Right.
why they produce really large hail. It's why they produced so many tornadoes. But it's that storm dropped to 970 something, right, like low 970s,
Mm. Hmm.
maybe 960s. I don't know how low we got, but that's a hurricane, and if it's in the ocean, it's a hurricane. So that's just how strong this system got.
Yeah.
Really
Probably a cat two
impressive.
or cat three hurricane, actually. Like it's not a little hurricane.
Oh, you're asking for it now. People are going to say land hurricane, land hurricane.
I know. Yep. HailTrace called it the hail hurricane.
Should
Hail
have named it.
hurricane,
Hurricane.
Hurricane.
hurricane. Uh, Now, Steve, I know you do have to go, so I don't want to keep you
Oh, you're fine.
too late. So feel free to jump out whenever you need to. But was there anything else that you saw from this storm, Steve, before you jump off here that you think is important? We can keep going through some of these, and we can go to what do we have left? Greensboro.
I think that was our last big
Uh,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, but was there anything else that we missed? today?
Let's see. We did the Ozark, St. Louis. We talked a little bit about Diaz, Arkansas, College Station. Oh man. No, I think that's it. I think that's the majority. So we can pop over to North Carolina.
All righty, let's do it.
Which, by the way, we forecasted North Carolina to get a 5-star event this year.
Hey.
And they almost pulled it off already. Almost.
In the first week.
I know.
Well, and Derik, you chose this as your 5-star map. So for people who don't know, everyone in HailTrace chooses a city that they think will see the first 5-star. They think will see the first significant hail event. You chose Greensboro, and you were almost spot on.
Almost.
just a little history. Just a little bit. Just, I missed it by a day. And Steve didn't want me to win, so I made it a 4-star. I think that's how it
All right,
so like how that storm pops up though. Was it a left split, Steve?
Ah, man, I don't.
Look how it's moving north.
Yeah. Judging by the radar,
can you back the radar up a little bit, Taylor?
It looks like it comes right off of that storm. Probably left.
So back it up and go south. Like all the way down to west of Charlotte. Keep going.
This is as far as it goes.
Okay. So, but you can so see that top cell right there on the left side. That's the Greensboro storm. See how all the other storms are kind of moving off to the right towards Raleigh, and they're going to go like Pittsboro and Sanford over there. So that left storm, that top storm right there. So that split off of another storm. So what was interesting is most of the storms this day did not produce big hail at all. They were all small hail producers. This storm split off, and that is a common character trait of a split storm, is that the north split or the left split produces really large hail. It's in fact, there was a study done that said 88% of these storms end up producing severe hail.
Wow.
And so I mean, watch this. So it splits off, and then it takes it a minute for it to get its stuff together, and then boom, right there, off it goes. Once it creates a little separation, off it goes, and then we've got the front to the north, so it just goes through right through the center of Greensboro, lights them up, and then as it goes, so see how it weakens, but then you've got the front coming in that's actually going to merge in. It's going to create some new storms off to its west, and that's what's going to kill it. That's gonna so everything. Yeah, see there that little line goes up, kills it all, and then it's done. So everything is fed off of something else, right? So this hailstorm does not happen unless it splits off from that other cell.
Way back here.
Yeah, way down. Really close to the South Carolina border, probably is where it actually split off at. But it splits off, creates some separation, and then boom, off it goes. And then as soon as it gets close to the front of the boundary where new storms fire, kills it, and hails over.
So Steve, give us from like your team's perspective, whenever they see this, and I know I only have one radar pulled up here. It's the KRAX radar. I don't have a terminal pulled up here, and I know that we would probably take a look at this radar as well. But whenever your team looks at this radar, and for people who don't know, this is your classic reflectivity on the upper right. This is your storm relative velocity on the bottom right. Over here is correlation coefficient, which is more helpful usually for tracking tornadoes, but we can change it to KDP if you want to, Steve. And then up to the top left is VIL, VIL, which is very helpful for tracking hail. However, it can be very misleading sometimes. So give us some inside baseball to when your team sees this, what are they looking at and how do they determine what to map from this? How do they determine what they're looking at from this?
Right. Yeah, it's a combination of several of these panels that you have on the radar right here. So we've got the reflectivity right there, right? So that's an indication of how intense the storm is, the type of the intensity of precipitation, the more purples and whites that you're going on there. It's the heavier, the lighter, the bluers, less intensity. So that's one of the first things that we started looking at there is the core of the storm. How strong is that core? From there, in terms of hail indication, correlation coefficient is one of the main pieces that we look at there. So this is a representation of the literally the correlation between precipitation types. So hydrometeors, as we call it in meteorology, rain, hail, dust, debris. Solid reds, like you see there, are all things correlating together. So it's all the same, type of stuff. You get into the yellows, greens, blues, that's a mix. So often, greens and blues like that, it's going to be one of two things really. If it's the circulation lines up, it's going to be tornadic debris. If you get a strong core like what you're seeing on radar here, probably large hail. So those are some of the things we look for there. Then you got the other couple things, of course, the wind velocities. We got what we call gate-to-gate shear that we look for. Reds and greens kind of indicate going towards the radar and away from the radar. That'll give you an idea of circulation. And then the other two there, we have a differential reflectivity. So that's kind of a big one there. That's kind of a conglomeration of algorithmic data. It's getting a little technical here, sorry, but it kind of represents, how much melting is going on, watershed from certain types of things. So like hailstones falling through the sky, melting, producing, water flying off of it, how much rain is within a storm system versus hail. Is it, rain dominant? Is it hail dominant? So there's all kinds of little things that we're looking at on this radar with each panel that kind of leads us. It does lead us. It leads us to, what we're deciding is occurring within a particular storm. So,
and then you're doing all that real time.
Yeah.
With
yeah.
then you
With
get with so many other storms all at the same time. Yeah, I know that's pretty impressive. I just wanted people to get a little bit of a look at what they're seeing here on these 4 panels that we can change to 5, 6, 7, 8 panels,
Yep.
and what the meteorologists look at whenever they see.
This is what you've got up right now is a classic. You take what you've got up now, multiply it by about 8 or 10. And that's a typical day for each meteorologist at HailTrace. So we got 8 or up to 8 or 10 of these radars, like what you got right now on our screens. We're just kind of alternating, to keep track of all the storms going on. So
yeah. And seeing the storm from a different angle, because Greensboro is obviously right in between 3 different radars. So we could look at this in 3 different angles if we needed to get a different view.
Did you see the hail spike?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the hail spike?
Yeah, the hail spike.
Move it up a couple frames up.
There it is.
Back, just a little bit north of Greens, right there.
There you go.
See the blue line? See the blue line shooting off to the left? That is not precipitation.
Yep.
That is.
Can you zoom in a little bit, Taylor? There you go.
That's what you're looking at. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
Especially on the CC, on the
right
correlation
here,
coefficients. The
It's a huge indication of big hail.
Especially because here's our radar, and so the hail spike, it makes sense that it's going away from the radar. So you'd expect it to that way, and that's exactly what we see.
Yep, right over Greensboro. Perfect timing or horrible timing, depending on how you want to look at it.
So I think that we've gone through a lot of our questions here, a lot of the things that we wanted to go through. I'll ask just one more time if there is anything else that we haven't talked about that you guys want to talk about while we're on here.
We got it all. This was interesting. I love seeing the Greensboro storm and the representation of that, especially being a left split. You got the hail spike, which is also a really cool thing for people to see. And then we got to look at tornadoes. We got to look at hail. I mean, this was a big outbreak, and it's mid-March, so we should be doing this again here in the upcoming weeks somewhere else.
Soon. Yeah.
Just the way it works.
Yep.
One thing that I saw on social media, you talked about the tornadoes, Derik, and I know that we're really focusing on hail today, so we don't have to get into this too much, but a lot of people were trying to compare this to April 27th, 2011, the super outbreak. And obviously we saw as it came to fruition, it wasn't anything like that at all. But the second that high risk was issued, there was a lot of people who were saying that online, especially with it being done in the Southeast and everything. And then the other comparison, of course, it would be hard not to compare it to March 14th of last year, where we had another big severe weather outbreak, but that is still different because it was more of a hail event. And this event, I feel like, was heavily had more tornadoes, was heavily focused on more tornadoes. So just some differences from what I've seen of the comparisons, and each event is of course different. So how much can you truly compare each event? But that's some of the comparisons that I've seen on social media so far.
That's like trying to compare, your favorite NBA player to Michael Jordan. He's just no. I mean, like that's the April 27th comparison. They're, I'm not going to call that anything great because that was a horrible outbreak.
Right.
But it was, that this outbreak would have had to had. So the tornado started off really strong and violent Friday night in southeast Missouri into Arkansas, and then kind of crossed over the Mississippi there. Had the tornadoes continued through the rest of the morning without a break, and then they kind of started back up again, and then done that, and then went all night the next night, and then all day the next day, like producing violent tornado round after round after round. That would be April 27th. I mean, it was 3 days nonstop, EF3 to EF5 tornadoes nonstop, over and over and over. Like areas were hit multiple times. It never stopped. So as soon as you thought like, okay, they're moving into Alabama, Mississippi, nope, new round is firing in Mississippi. Those are going to also move through Alabama. So in most areas, it was a 24-hour period of you're under a significant tornado watch with big tornadoes possible. And, I mean, think about if you lived there, right? Trying to, okay, well, I'm tired. I need to go to sleep, but these tornadoes are bad. And, I don't want to sleep through a warning. That was a different type of day. So, and this one didn't even get close.
No, maybe same area of the country, but other than that, there were major differences. And then, of course, we talked about last year as well, which it seems like that switch is flipped on March 14th, the past 2 years. That is, severe weather season is on, it's on. And we have another chance for storms tonight and another round on Sunday, late this weekend, early next week. So, of course, we'll be tracking it.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Taylor, thanks for putting this together, and keep watching these storms.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. And of course, follow us on social media. We have a daily forecast at noon every single day. And we also do live coverage for storms while our mapping team is mapping them. So follow us on all social media. Have a great Tuesday.